Blind sterile CEO takes her daughter to work, and the millionaire CEO freezes when he feels the girl's pee. His steel-gray eyes were locked on Kayla's chest, where a small silver pendant hung from a delicate chain. The necklace caught the light as Kayla moved, sending tiny reflections dancing across the marble walls. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The richest man in America froze like he'd seen a ghost, all because of a $5 necklace around a little girl's throat. Have you ever seen someone's face change the moment they recognize something from their past? Something they thought was lost forever? In that marble-floored Atlanta bank, surrounded by wealth and power, a single pendant was about to expose secrets that could destroy everything. But what happens when the past refuses to stay buried, and a child becomes the key to unlocking the truth? Monica Davis wiped the sweat from her forehead as she pushed through the heavy glass doors of First National Bank. The air conditioning hit her like a wall of cold relief after the brutal Atlanta heat. Her daughter Kayla's small hands squeezed hers tighter as they stepped into the lobby filled with people in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases. "Mama, everyone's dressed so fancy," Kayla whispered, tugging at her worn sundress. "We belong here, just like everyone else, baby," Monica replied, though she felt the stares burning into her back. Her waitressing uniform from the diner still smelled like coffee and bacon grease, a stark contrast to the polished marble floors that reflected the afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. They joined the line at the teller window. Monica counted the crumpled bills in her hand, $43 from yesterday's tips. Not much, but every dollar mattered when you were building a life from nothing. The crowd around them buzzed with important conversations about investments and portfolios. Monica kept her eyes down, focusing on Kayla's chatter about the pretty patterns in the floor. But then the noise stopped. Complete silence fell over the lobby like someone had hit a mute button. Daniel Price stood frozen in the center of the bank, his 6-foot frame commanding attention even in stillness. His tailor navy suit probably cost more than Monica, made in 3 months, and his presence made grown men and expensive watches step aside. But right now, the most powerful man in the room looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His steel-gray eyes were locked on Kayla's chest, where a small silver pendant hung from a delicate chain. The necklace caught the light as Kayla moved, sending tiny reflections dancing across the marble walls. "Sir? Mr. Price?" A nervous banker approached him, confusion written across his face. "Is everything all right?" Daniel couldn't speak. His hands trembled as he stared at the little girl with dark curls and bright eyes, who was completely unaware of the chaos she'd caused just by existing in the same space as him. Monica had noticed the attention first. Everyone was looking at Kayla, then at the man in the expensive suit, then back at Kayla. Her protective instincts flared. "Come on, baby," she said, pulling Kayla closer. "Let's move to a different line." But Daniel's voice cut through the silence, rough and broken. "Wait." Monica turned, meeting his intense gaze for the first time. Up close, she could see the shock in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched like he was fighting some internal battle. "That necklace," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did she get that necklace?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Monica's spine straightened, her street instincts kicking in. Rich men didn't ask poor women questions unless they wanted something, and she'd learned long ago that what they wanted usually came with a price she couldn't afford. "Excuse me." Monica's voice carried a warning edge. "Why do you care about my daughter's jewelry?" The crowd pressed closer, sensing drama. Phones appeared, recording the confrontation between the billionaire and the woman in the stained uniform. Daniel seemed unaware of the audience, his focus completely absorbed by the pendant around Kayla's neck. If you've ever wondered how a single moment can change everything, hit that like button and follow this story that's about to shake you to your core. Daniel took a step forward, his movements careful like he was approaching a wild animal. "That necklace is custom-made. One of a kind. I designed it myself years ago." Monica's blood ran cold. "What are you trying to say?" "I made it for someone I loved," Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. Someone who disappeared from my life. Someone who was pregnant when she left. The whispers started immediately. Cameras clicked. Someone gasped. Monica felt the walls closing in as dozens of strangers formed theories about her life, her daughter, her past. But none of them knew the truth that was about to surface. None of them understood that the necklace around Kayla's neck wasn't just jewelry. It was evidence of a connection that would change 3 lives forever. As Daniel reached toward Kayla's necklace with trembling fingers, Monica stepped back protectively. "Don't touch my daughter," she warned. But the words that came from his mouth next made her blood run cold. "That necklace. I made it. For someone I loved." And as his eyes met Monica's, searching her face for answers she didn't even know she had, one question echoed through the silent bank lobby. If he made that necklace for someone else, how did it end up around Kayla's neck? She thought she was protecting her child from a stranger, until that stranger proved he knew secrets about her daughter that even she didn't know. The heavy glass doors of the bank exploded open as a man in an expensive charcoal suit stormed inside, his face red with fury. Marcus Webb, Daniel's head of corporate security, had clearly run from the parking garage. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his tie sat crooked against his white shirt. "Mr. Price," Marcus shouted across the lobby, pushing past startled customers. "Step away from them immediately." Monica instinctively pulled Kayla behind her, creating a human shield between her daughter and the chaos erupting around them. The little girl's fingers dug into the fabric of Monica's uniform as the crowd pressed closer, eager to witness whatever drama was unfolding. Marcus reached them in seconds, placing himself between Daniel and Monica like a bodyguard intercepting an assassination attempt. His cold blue eyes assessed Monica from head to toe, taking in her worn clothes, her defensive posture, the way she clutched her daughter. "This is exactly what we were afraid of," Marcus announced loudly enough for the gathering crowd to hear. Another gold digger trying to trap Mr. Price with some sob story about a child. The words hit Monica like a physical blow. Heat flooded her cheeks as every person in the lobby turned to stare at her with new understanding. She wasn't just a poor woman in the wrong place. She was a schemer, a user, someone trying to con a rich man. "How dare you?" Monica's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Marcus despite the difference in their size and power. "I don't know who you think you are, but I didn't ask this man for anything." "Right," Marcus sneered. "You just happened to bring your daughter to this specific bank at this specific time, wearing jewelry that would catch Mr. Price's attention. What's next? Are you going to claim the child is his?" The crowd gasped. Phones lifted higher, recording every word. Monica felt exposed under the harsh lobby lights, like an animal in a zoo being gawked at by visitors who'd paid for entertainment. But instead of shrinking back, something fierce awakened in Monica's chest. She'd spent her whole life being looked down on by people who thought money made them better than her. She'd been called trash, worthless, a burden. But nobody was going to disrespect her daughter. "Listen to me very carefully," Monica said, her voice deadly quiet. "I work 2 jobs to support my child. I've never asked anyone for handouts, and I sure as hell didn't come here to trap anybody. My daughter's necklace belonged to her aunt, who died before she was born. If your boss has a problem with that, he can take it up with God." The bank's security cameras captured everything. The moment a working mother from Alabama stood toe-to-toe with corporate sharks, her chin raised in defiance while her daughter clutched her hand. The marble floors reflected the tension crackling between them as Monica faced down men who controlled millions of dollars with nothing but her integrity and maternal rage. Daniel had remained silent during the confrontation, but Monica's fierce defense of herself stirred something in his chest he hadn't felt in years. The way she stood up to Marcus, the fire in her dark eyes, the protective way she held her daughter, it reminded him of someone he'd loved and lost. Despite the chaos swirling around them, Daniel couldn't stop watching Monica's mouth as she defended herself, the passion in her voice awakening memories he'd buried under years of corporate ruthlessness and carefully controlled emotions. "Marcus, enough." Daniel finally spoke, his voice carrying the authority that made boardrooms fall silent. "Back off." "Sir, this is clearly a setup." "I said back off." Daniel's tone brooked no argument. Marcus stepped aside, but his suspicious glare never left Monica's face. "Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? When someone tried to make you feel small because of your circumstances? Tell me in the comments how you fought back." Daniel moved closer to Monica, ignoring the cameras and whispered conversation surrounding them. "I apologize for my employees' behavior, but I need you to understand, that necklace isn't just jewelry. It's proof of something I thought I'd lost forever." Monica's defensive posture softened slightly, but her voice remained guarded. "What are you talking about?" "The woman I gave that necklace to," Daniel said quietly, his eyes never leaving Monica's face. "Her name was Jasmine. We were involved. Serious. She was pregnant when she disappeared from my life 7 years ago." The lobby fell completely silent. Even the whispers stopped as everyone strained to hear Daniel's next words. Monica's hand tightened on Kayla's shoulder as a cold realization began creeping up her spine. "You're saying—" Monica's voice trailed off. "I'm saying that necklace was custom designed. One of kind. I had it made specifically for Jasmine, with her birthstone in the center. There's no way another one exists." Monica's world tilted sideways. Jasmine. Her sister Jasmine, who'd run away from Birmingham when Monica was 19. Jasmine, who'd called once from New Orleans to say she was pregnant but wouldn't say who the father was. Jasmine, who died in a car accident 6 months later, leaving behind a newborn daughter that Monica had raised as her own. The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. Kayla's birth certificate listed Monica as her mother because she'd been the only family willing to take responsibility for an orphan baby. But if Daniel was telling the truth? Just as security moved to escort Monica out of the bank, Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "Wait." His next words silenced the entire lobby. "The woman I gave that necklace to, her name was Jasmine, and she was pregnant when she disappeared." Monica's world tilted as she realized Jasmine was her sister's name. The sister who died giving birth to the little girl now hiding behind Monica's legs. Family secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible moment, like when a billionaire claims your dead sister might have been carrying his child. The private conference room Daniel secured felt like a fishbowl, glass walls exposing them to curious stares while they navigated revelations that could rewrite both their lives. Monica sat across from Daniel at the polished oak table, Kayla coloring quietly in a chair between them, completely unaware that the adults were discussing her entire identity. Marcus paced near the door like a caged predator, occasionally checking his phone and muttering about damage control and media statements. But Daniel's attention remained fixed on Monica, studying her face with an intensity that made her skin warm despite the room's cool temperature. "Tell me about Jasmine," Daniel said gently. Monica's fingers twisted together in her lap. She hadn't talked about her sister in years. The grief was still too raw, the guilt too overwhelming. "She was my older sister, 3 years older. Wild, beautiful, always chasing some dream or adventure." "What did she look like?" The question seemed innocent enough, but Monica hesitated. She'd spent years trying to forget how similar she and Jasmine had looked, how people used to mistake them for twins despite the age difference. "Like me," Monica admitted quietly. "Everyone said we looked like twins. Same hair, same eyes, same smile. People couldn't tell us apart from behind." Daniel's breath caught. When he'd first seen Monica in the bank lobby, something familiar had tugged at his consciousness, but he dismissed it as coincidence. Now, studying her features in the harsh conference room lighting, he could see Jasmine's face reflected in Monica's bone structure, her expressions, the way she held her head when she was thinking. "She left Birmingham when I was 19, Monica continued. Said she was tired of being poor, tired of our mama's drinking and daddy's absence. She wanted something better. When did you last see her?" Monica's voice dropped to a whisper. 6 years ago. She called me from New Orleans, said she was pregnant. She sounded different, scared but excited. Said the baby's father was someone important, someone who could give them both a good life. Daniel's hands clenched on the conference table. New Orleans. 6 years ago. The timeline matched perfectly with his relationship with Jasmine, the whirlwind romance that had consumed him for 3 months before she vanished without explanation. She died in a car accident when Kayla was 6 months old, Monica said, her voice breaking slightly. I was the only family willing to take custody. The state was going to put Kayla in foster care, but I couldn't let that happen. She was my blood, my responsibility. When Daniel showed Monica photos of Jasmine on his phone, his fingers brushed hers as he passed the device, sending an unexpected jolt through both of them despite the emotional chaos surrounding the moment. The touch lingered longer than necessary, neither of them pulling away from the contact. Monica's breath caught as she stared at the screen. There was Jasmine, laughing and radiant, wearing the same necklace that now hung around Kayla's neck. But more shocking was seeing her sister wrapped in Daniel's arms, looking happy in a way Monica had never witnessed during their childhood in Birmingham. She told me she loved someone, Monica whispered, tracing Jasmine's face on the phone screen. Said he was different from the other men she'd known. She was planning to tell him about the pregnancy, but then she disappeared, Daniel finished. One day she was there talking about our future, planning to move in with me. The next day, her apartment was empty. No forwarding address, no note, no explanation. I hired private investigators, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air. Marcus cleared his throat from his position by the door. Mr. Price, we need to discuss the legal implications of this situation. If the child is actually... Not now, Marcus. Daniel's voice carried a warning that made his security chief step back. Monica looked between Daniel and Marcus, suddenly aware that she'd stumbled into something much bigger than a simple case of mistaken identity. These weren't just personal revelations. They were potential legal battles, custody disputes, media nightmares that could destroy the quiet life she'd built for herself and Kayla. What would you do if you discovered your child might be connected to someone you never knew existed? How do you process that kind of family secret? Share your thoughts below. Kayla looked up from her coloring book, her bright eyes moving between Monica and Daniel with the intuitive understanding children sometimes possess. Mama, why does the nice man look sad when he looks at my necklace? The innocent question hung in the air like a challenge. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her entire identity might be built on a foundation of secrets and lies? Daniel leaned forward, his voice gentle as he addressed Kayla directly for the first time. Because this necklace reminds me of someone very special who went away before I could meet you. Did you know my first mama? Kayla asked with the directness only children possess. Monica's heart stopped. Kayla had never asked about her biological mother before, apparently content with the only family she'd ever known. But something about Daniel's presence had awakened questions that had been dormant for years. Daniel's eyes met Monica's across the table, asking permission. She gave a barely perceptible nod. I think I might have, Daniel said carefully. And if I did, then you and I might be connected in a very special way. Kayla considered this with the seriousness of a child processing complex adult concepts. Are you going to be my daddy? She asked matter-of-factly. The question hit Daniel like a physical blow. He'd built an empire, commanded respect in boardrooms across the globe, made decisions that affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. But nothing had prepared him for the simple hope in a little girl's voice as she asked if he might belong to her. As Daniel pulled out his phone to show Monica pictures of Jasmine, her breath caught. The woman in the photos looked exactly like Monica. Same eyes, same smile, even the same way of tilting her head when she laughed. We weren't just lovers, Daniel whispered, his voice thick with emotion. We were planning to marry. She was carrying my child when she vanished. Monica's hands shook as the truth hit her like a sledgehammer. If Jasmine was Kayla's mother, then this powerful stranger wasn't just someone from her sister's past. He might be her daughter's father. Some truths can only be found in blood. But are you prepared for what that blood might reveal about the people you love most? The medical facility's sterile white corridors felt like a courthouse where the verdict would determine not guilt or innocence, but identity itself, who belonged to whom, and what that belonging might cost. Monica walked beside Daniel through the hallway, their footsteps echoing off the polished floors while Kayla skipped ahead, treating the visit like an adventure rather than a life-altering investigation. Dr. Patricia Williams had agreed to handle the paternity testing personally, partly due to Daniel's influence and partly because she understood the sensitive nature of the situation. Her private lab had processed DNA for celebrities, politicians, and high-profile custody battles, but something about this case felt different. The results will be available in 72 hours, Dr. Williams explained as they entered her office. I've expedited the process due to the circumstances, but we want to ensure accuracy above speed. Monica sat in the leather chair across from the doctor's desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. 3 days had never seemed so long or so short simultaneously. 3 days to prepare for a truth that could change everything or confirm that this had all been an elaborate coincidence. Daniel occupied the chair next to her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. In the waiting room earlier, they'd sat with their knees almost touching as they both watched Kayla play with the office toys, creating an intimacy born of shared anxiety and anticipation. I need to be honest with both of you, Dr. Williams continued, her voice professional but kind. If the tests confirm paternity, there will be legal implications beyond the emotional ones. Custody arrangements, financial responsibilities, parental rights. These are complex issues that require careful consideration. Monica's stomach clenched. She'd raised Kayla alone for 6 years, making every decision, handling every crisis, being the only constant in her daughter's life. The idea of sharing that responsibility with someone else, even someone as seemingly decent as Daniel, terrified her. What exactly are you saying? Monica asked. I'm saying that biological fathers have rights, Dr. Williams replied gently. And wealthy biological fathers have resources to exercise those rights in ways that can be overwhelming for single mothers. Daniel shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the implication. I'm not trying to take Kayla away from Monica. If the tests prove I'm her father, I want to be part of her life, not replace the only parent she's ever known. But Monica had heard promises from him before. Her own father had made similar declarations before disappearing entirely. Jasmine's previous boyfriends had sworn they'd stick around until reality set in. Money and power had a way of changing people's perspectives on what they deserved to have. Mama, are we getting ice cream after this? Kayla asked, wandering over to Monica's chair and leaning against her knee. Maybe, baby, Monica replied, stroking Kayla's dark curls. We'll see how you do with the doctor. Dr. Williams smiled at Kayla's innocence. It's just going to be a tiny poke, sweetheart, like when you get your shots, but much smaller. And then we'll know some interesting things about your family. Will it tell us if Mr. Daniel is really my daddy? Kayla asked with the directness that constantly surprised the adults around her. The room fell silent. Monica felt Daniel's eyes on her, waiting to see how she'd handle their daughter's question. Their daughter. The phrase had started creeping into her thoughts despite her efforts to maintain emotional distance until the results were confirmed. The test will tell us if you and Mr. Daniel are related, Monica explained carefully. Like family. I hope we are, Kayla said simply, reaching out to take Daniel's hand. He seems nice, and he has sad eyes like you do sometimes, Mama. Daniel's breath caught at the unexpected contact. Kayla's small hand felt impossibly delicate in his, her trust offered so freely despite knowing him for less than a week. When he looked down at her upturned face, he saw echoes of Jasmine's features mixed with something uniquely Kayla. If someone claimed your child might actually be their biological family, would you want to know the truth? Even if it complicated everything? Drop a heart if you take that risk. The blood draw took less than 5 minutes, but the implications would last a lifetime. Monica held Kayla in her lap while the nurse prepared the supplies, her arms wrapped protectively around the little girl who had been her world for 6 years. Daniel sat beside them, rolling up his sleeve for his own sample. The simple act of giving blood had never felt so loaded with possibility and consequence. In 72 hours, they'd know if his genetic material matched the child who'd already started calling him by name instead of Mr. Daniel. All done, the nurse announced cheerfully. Easy as pie. Kayla examined the small bandage on her arm with interest. Does this mean we're going to be a real family now? The question caught both adults off guard. Monica's arms tightened around Kayla instinctively, while Daniel felt something shift in his chest, a longing he hadn't acknowledged, a hope he'd been afraid to name. What do you mean by a real family, baby? Monica asked carefully. Like on TV, Kayla explained with 6-year-old logic. With a mama and a daddy who live together and take care of me. Maybe we could get a dog, too. Daniel's laugh surprised everyone, including himself. A dog, huh? That's a pretty serious addition to consider. Dogs are good for families, Kayla said seriously. They protect people and love them no matter what. As the nurse prepared to draw blood samples, Kayla looked up at Daniel with eyes that mirrored his own steel gray color, a detail Monica had never noticed before this moment. Are you going to be my daddy? She asked innocently. The question hung in the air like a prayer and a threat, because in 72 hours, they'd know if a little girl's simple wish would become a reality that would bind 3 lives together forever, whether they were ready for it or not. 3 days can feel like forever when you're waiting for results that could change 3 lives, especially when those 3 days force you to see each other as more than strangers. The Atlanta Children's Museum became their neutral ground, where a billionaire learned to see the world through a 6-year-old's eyes, while her mother learned to see him as more than just money and power. Daniel had suggested the outing as a way to pass time while they waited for the DNA results, but Monica suspected he was also trying to understand Kayla's world, the museums and parks and simple pleasures that had filled their life together. Look, Mama, you can make lightning. Kayla pressed her palms against the static electricity ball, her hair standing up in wild directions as bolts of light followed her touch. Daniel laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in months as he watched Kayla's expression of pure wonder. That's amazing, isn't it? The electricity is attracted to you. Like magnets. Kayla asked, still mesmerized by the light show her hands created. Exactly like magnets. Sometimes things that seem different are actually meant to be connected. Monica caught the double meaning in his words and felt her cheeks warm. Over the past 3 days, she'd started noticing things about Daniel that had nothing to do with his wealth or status. The way he listened when Kayla talked, giving her his complete attention like her words mattered as much as any business deal. How he'd insisted on paying for their museum admission not as charity, but because he wanted to share the experience with them. When they moved to the dinosaur exhibit, Kayla grabbed both their hands, swinging between them as they walked. To strangers passing by, they looked like any other family spending Saturday afternoon together. The illusion was so convincing that Monica almost forgot this was temporary. 3 days of waiting that might end with Daniel walking out of their lives forever. The T-Rex was a carnivore, Kayla announced, reading from the information placard with serious concentration. That means it ate meat, like chicken nuggets, but bigger animals. Much bigger, Daniel agreed, crouching down to Kayla's eye level. But you know what's interesting? Scientists now think T-Rex might have been a good parent. They protected their babies and brought them food. Monica watched Daniel interact with Kayla, noting how he'd adapted his communication style to match a 6-year-old's understanding without being condescending. He didn't talk down to her or dismiss her questions as silly. Instead, he engaged with her curiosity as if her thoughts deserved serious consideration. When they reached the hands-on discovery area, Kayla ran ahead to explore the water table while Monica and Daniel found themselves alone for the first time all day. She's incredible, Daniel said quietly, his eyes never leaving Kayla as she experimented with water flow and pressure. Smart, curious, fearless. You've done an amazing job raising her. Monica felt a flutter in her chest at his praise. She'd received compliments about Kayla before, but hearing it from Daniel felt different. More meaningful somehow. She's easy to love. Always has been, even as a baby. It couldn't have been easy, though. Taking on a 6-month-old when you were barely out of your teens yourself. Monica shrugged, but her voice carried the weight of years of struggle. You do what you have to do for family. Kayla needed someone, and I needed purpose. We save each other, really. Daniel moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in her voice. When he helped her reach a high exhibit panel Kayla wanted to see, his body pressed behind hers for just a moment, both acutely aware of the attraction building despite the complicated circumstances surrounding their relationship. The contact lasted only seconds, but Monica felt the warmth of his chest against her back, caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine. When she turned to thank him, they were standing close enough that she could see the flecks of green in his gray eyes, close enough to notice the way his gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to meet her stare. "Monica," he said quietly, his voice different from the confident tone he used in business settings. "Yeah." The word came out breathier than she intended. "Whatever the test results show, I want you to know that meeting you and Kayla has been unexpected. Good, unexpected. Have you ever found yourself attracted to someone at the most complicated moment? When timing couldn't be worse, but chemistry couldn't be stronger? Tell me your story." Before Monica could respond, Kayla's voice called out across the exhibit area. "Mama, come see." The water goes up. The moment broke, but the tension remained as they rejoined Kayla at the water table. Daniel rolled up his sleeves and helped Kayla work the pumps and levers, getting splashed in the process and not caring about his expensive shirt or the water spots on his leather shoes. Watching them together, Monica felt a dangerous emotion creeping into her heart. Hope. Hope that maybe Kayla could have the father figure she'd never known. Hope that maybe Monica didn't have to carry every burden alone. Hope that maybe against all odds, they could figure out how to build something together. But hope was a luxury she'd learned not to trust. Every time she'd allowed herself to believe things might get better, life had proven her wrong. Men left. Families fell apart. Money ran out. The only constant was the love between her and Kayla, and she couldn't risk that for anything. As they prepared to leave the museum, Kayla tugged on Daniel's hand. "Will you come with us again tomorrow?" Daniel looked at Monica, asking permission with his eyes. She found herself nodding before her brain could override her heart. "I'd like that very much," Daniel replied, lifting Kayla onto his shoulders for the walk to the parking lot. As they walked through the museum together, looking like a family to strangers, Monica felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of not doing everything alone. But when Daniel's phone buzzed with a text notification, reality crashed back. The lab's name appeared on his screen, followed by a simple message: "Results ready for pickup Monday morning." Everything was about to change. Looking up at Kayla perched on Daniel's shoulders, her small hands tangled in his dark hair as she pointed out interesting clouds in the sky, Monica realized that whatever the DNA test revealed, their lives were already intertwined in ways that couldn't be undone by paperwork or legal documents. The question now wasn't whether they were connected, it was what they were going to do about it. She opened the envelope expecting answers. Instead, she found a truth that raised more questions about her family, her past, and her future than she ever imagined possible. Monday morning arrived with the weight of destiny hanging over them like storm clouds. Monica had barely slept, tossing and turning in her small apartment bed, while Kayla slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that her entire world might shift before lunch. Daniel picked them up at 9 sharp, his usually perfect appearance slightly rumpled around the edges. His tie sat crooked, his hair looked like he'd run his fingers through it repeatedly, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd gotten even less sleep than Monica. "You look terrible," Monica said as she buckled Kayla into the back seat of his Mercedes. "Thanks. You look beautiful as always," he replied automatically, then stopped, realizing what he'd said. The compliment hung between them, unexpected and honest. Monica felt heat creep up her neck. Even exhausted and anxious, Daniel still managed to make her heart skip with simple words she probably wasn't supposed to take seriously. The lawyer's office felt smaller with each word read aloud, the legal language doing nothing to soften the life-altering reality printed on official letterhead. Dr. Williams sat across from them at the conference table. The manila envelope opened in front of her like a book revealing secrets written in genetic code. The results are conclusive, Dr. Williams began, her professional voice carrying the weight of 3 lives about to change forever. Daniel Price is the biological father of Kayla Davis with 99.99% certainty. The words hit the room like a bomb going off in slow motion. Monica's hands went numb. Daniel stopped breathing entirely. Kayla, who had been coloring quietly in the corner, looked up at the sudden silence. "What does that mean?" Kayla asked, her 6-year-old brain processing the tension in the room, even if she didn't understand the specific words. Monica couldn't speak. The confirmation she'd expected still felt like a punch to the chest. Her daughter, the child she'd raised alone, sacrificed for, built her entire life around, belonged to someone else. Biologically, legally, genetically, Kayla was Daniel's daughter as much as hers. Daniel's voice came out rough and broken. It means you're my daughter, sweetheart. My little girl." In the emotional aftermath of hearing those words spoken aloud for the first time, Daniel instinctively reached for Monica's hand to comfort her, and neither pulled away. His fingers intertwined with hers, creating an intimate connection amidst the chaos of lawyers and legal documents and life-changing revelations. Kayla dropped her crayons and walked over to Daniel with the serious expression she wore when processing important information. She studied his face for a long moment, then reached up and touched his cheek with her small hand. "You have the same eyes as me," she observed quietly. "I do," Daniel whispered, his voice thick with emotion he'd never experienced before. This was his daughter. This beautiful, smart, incredible little girl was his flesh and blood, his legacy, his second chance at the family he'd thought he'd lost forever when Jasmine disappeared. But looking at Monica's pale face, he realized that his joy came at the cost of her security. For 6 years, she'd been Kayla's only parent. Now she had to share that role with a virtual stranger who had unlimited resources to fight for whatever he wanted. "There are legal procedures to discuss," the lawyer began, but Daniel held up a hand to stop him. "Not now. Let's process this first." That afternoon, they found themselves back at Monica's apartment. The familiar space feeling different now that Daniel's presence carried the weight of permanent connection rather than temporary curiosity. Kayla played in her room while the adults sat on Monica's second-hand couch. The DNA results on the coffee table between them like a contract neither had signed but both were bound to honor. "I don't know how to do this," Monica admitted quietly. "Share her, I mean. She's been mine for so long." "She's still yours," Daniel replied, his voice gentle. "I'm not trying to replace you or take her away. I want to be part of her life. Part of both your lives, if you'll let me." The way he said, "both your lives," made Monica's stomach flutter with dangerous possibilities. She'd been attracted to him before the test results, drawn to his kindness with Kayla and his unexpected vulnerability. Now, that attraction felt more complicated, loaded with questions about what kind of relationship was appropriate between two people who shared a child but barely knew each other. How do you handle life-changing news that's both wonderful and terrifying? When your biggest fear and biggest hope collide? Share your experience below. That evening, overwhelmed by the day's revelations and the intensity of emotions she couldn't quite name, Monica found herself standing outside Daniel's hotel room door. She'd left Kayla with her neighbor, claiming she needed to discuss logistics and legal arrangements. But as Daniel opened the door and she saw the relief in his eyes at seeing her there, she knew she'd come for reasons that had nothing to do with custody agreements. "I don't know how to process this," she whispered as he pulled her inside, away from the hallway where anyone might see them together. "We don't have to process anything right now," he replied, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that made her knees weak. "We just have to feel." Their kiss was desperate and hungry, born of shared confusion and undeniable attraction that had been building since that first moment in a bank. Monica had never wanted someone the way she wanted Daniel in that moment. Not just physically, but emotionally, completely, in ways that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. He lifted her onto the hotel room's marble counter, his hands spanning her waist as she wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer. The cool stone against her back contrasted with the heat of his mouth on her neck, his whispered words against her skin. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice rough with desire and concern. "No, Monica Bridanistri, but I want you anyway." They moved together with an urgency that had nothing to do with experience and everything to do with need. When he carried her to the bed, Monica felt like she was falling off a cliff she'd been standing on the edge of for days. The landing would either destroy her or change her life completely. Later, as they lay tangled in expensive hotel sheets, Monica's phone rang from somewhere on the floor where her clothes had been discarded. The harsh sound cut through their post-intimacy, quiet like an alarm. She found the phone in her jeans pocket, seeing her landlord's name on the screen with growing dread. Mr. Peterson never called unless there was a problem. "Monica, you're 3 days late on rent." His gruff voice carried clearly in the quiet room. Daniel could hear every word from where he lay watching her. "I've been patient, but I need payment by Wednesday or you're out. I've got a waiting list of tenants who can pay on time." The call ended, leaving silence that felt heavier than the passion they just shared. Monica sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the sheet to her chest, the harsh reality of her financial situation crashing back into the fantasy bubble they created. Daniel sat up behind her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "Let me help." "No." Monica's response was immediate and fierce. "I can't start accepting handouts now. Not when everything between us is already so complicated." "It's not a handout. It's exactly what your security guy accused me of in the bank," Monica interrupted, standing and reaching for her clothes. "Using my connection to you to solve my problems." Daniel watched her dress with growing frustration. "Monica, be practical. I'm Kayla's father. Her housing situation affects me too." Monica turned to face him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and stubborn pride that Daniel was beginning to recognize as fundamentally Monica. "If you're really Kayla's father, then we need to figure this out together, as partners, not as you fixing my problems with your money. There's a difference." As they lay tangled in hotel sheets after sharing their first intimate moment, Monica's phone rang with the harsh reality of unpaid rent and eviction threats. Daniel heard every word her landlord spoke, the ultimatum that would put his newly discovered daughter on the streets. "Let me help," he offered, but Monica's response surprised them both. "If you're really Kayla's father, then we need to figure this out together, not with your money fixing my problems, but as real partners building something that lasts." She'd spent her life refusing handouts, until the day a billionaire offered partnership instead of charity, and she realized there's a difference between being rescued and being respected. The small coffee shop on Peachtree Street buzzed with morning rush hour energy as Monica and Daniel sat across from each other at a corner table. Legal documents spread between their coffee cups like a roadmap to an uncertain future. They'd chosen this public space deliberately, neutral ground where they could discuss custody arrangements without the intimacy of private spaces clouding their judgment. Kayla sat beside Monica, working on a coloring book while the adults navigated the complex logistics of shared parenting. She'd adapted to Daniel's presence in their lives with the flexibility of childhood, accepting him as Daddy Daniel, without questioning how unusual their situation actually was. "I want to contribute to her education, healthcare, everything," Daniel said, his pen hovering over the custody agreement their lawyers had drafted. "But I also want regular visitation. Weekends, holidays, summer vacation time." Monica's chest tightened at the thought of Kayla spending weeks away from her, living in Daniel's world of penthouses and private schools and opportunities Monica could never provide. "She's never been away from me for more than a few hours." "I know this is hard," Daniel replied gently, "but she deserves to know both sides of her family, her father's world and her mother's world." The word mother hit Monica strangely. Legally, she wasn't Kayla's mother. She was her aunt who had raised her. But emotionally, she'd been Kayla's mother for 6 years, the only parent the child had ever known. "What if she likes your world better?" Monica asked quietly, voicing her deepest fear. "What if she decides she'd rather live with private tutors and designer clothes and everything I can't give her?" Daniel reached across the table, covering Monica's hand with his. The gesture had become natural between them since they'd crossed the line from strangers to lovers, though they still hadn't discussed what that meant for their future. Kids don't love you for what you can buy them, Daniel said. They love you for how you make them feel. Kayla feels safe with you, loved by you. Money can't replace that. Monica wanted to believe him, but she'd grown up watching money change everything. Rich kids got better schools, better opportunities, better chances at success. If she truly loved Kayla, shouldn't she want the child to have access to Daniel's resources, even if it meant less time with her? Their conversation was interrupted by Monica's phone buzzing with a text message. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, noting her expression. "My boss at the diner. He's cutting my hours because business is slow. I'm down to 3 shifts a week starting next Monday." The financial blow couldn't have come at a worse time. With reduced income from the diner and her landlord breathing down her neck about rent, Monica's carefully balanced budget was about to collapse completely. Daniel felt Monica's subtle withdrawal as she pulled her hand away from his, her walls going back up as financial stress triggered her defensive instincts. But instead of offering money, which he knew she'd refuse, he tried a different approach. "What if we looked at this differently?" Daniel suggested carefully. "Not as me helping you, but as us building something together that benefits Kayla." Monica's eyebrows lifted skeptically. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we found a way to blend our worlds instead of keeping them separate? You know Kayla better than anyone. You understand what she needs, how she learns, what makes her happy. I have resources, but no experience. Maybe we could create something that combines both." Have you ever had to choose between pride and practicality? When accepting help felt like giving up your independence? Tell me how you navigated that choice. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed Monica something he'd been working on since learning he was Kayla's father. "I've been researching after-school programs in your neighborhood. Educational support for working parents, tutoring, childcare. What if we started something like that? You could run it, I could fund it, and Kayla could be part of a program that helps other kids too." Monica stared at the research Daniel had compiled, demographic data, needs assessments, potential locations, everything laid out with the thoroughness of a man who built business empires from ideas. But this wasn't about profit margins or market share. This was about community, about giving kids like Kayla opportunities that didn't require leaving their neighborhoods behind. "You're serious about this," Monica realized. "Dead serious. Look, I can write checks to charity all day long, but that doesn't create lasting change. This will be different. A partnership where your knowledge and my resources actually build something meaningful." Kayla looked up from her coloring book, apparently sensing the shift in her parents' conversation. "What are you building?" Monica and Daniel exchanged glances, both struck by how natural it felt to be called parents plural instead of singular. "We're talking about creating a place where kids can go after school," Monica explained carefully. "To do homework, learn new things, have fun while their parents are working. Like a big play date every day." Kayla's eyes lit up with interest. "Something like that," Daniel confirmed. "What do you think about that idea? Will there be other kids like me?" Kayla asked with the directness that consistently surprised the adults in her life. "What do you mean, baby?" Monica asked. "Kids who don't have daddies usually, but then they do, but it's confusing." Kayla's 6-year-old attempt to articulate blended family complexity made both adults pause. Daniel leaned forward, giving Kayla his full attention. "There might be kids with all different kinds of families. Some with mamas and daddies, some with just mamas, some with just daddies, some with grandparents or aunts like you had. All kinds of families that love each other." "Good," Kayla declared with satisfaction. "Because families are supposed to be different. That's what makes them special." Monica felt something shift in her chest at Kayla's simple wisdom. Maybe the little girl understood something the adults were still struggling with. That love doesn't come in standard packages, and families don't have to look like magazine pictures to be real. As they walked out of the coffee shop together, Daniel carrying Kayla on his shoulders while Monica gathered their papers, they looked like any other family handling the logistics of daily life. But Monica knew they were still figuring out what kind of family they wanted to be. That evening, as Monica tucked Kayla into bed, The little girl asked the question that had been weighing on everyone's mind. Mama, is Daddy Daniel going to live with us now? Monica's heart clenched at the hope in Kayla's voice. It's complicated, baby. Adults have to figure out a lot of things when families change. But he loves us, right? Kayla pressed. And we love him. The questions hung in the air like challenges Monica wasn't sure how to answer. Did Daniel love them? Or was he just trying to do the right thing for his newly discovered daughter? And did Monica love him? Or was she just grateful for his presence in their complicated situation? As she kissed Kayla goodnight and turned off the bedroom light, Monica realized that some questions couldn't be answered with logic or planning. Some things had to be discovered by living them day by day, choice by choice, until the truth became clear enough to name. But first, they had to figure out if they could build something together without losing themselves in the process. People say love bridges different worlds, but nobody tells you how terrifying it is to stand in the middle, wondering if the bridge will hold under the weight of everything you're trying to balance. The boardroom on the 30th floor of Price Industries felt like a different planet compared to the community center where Monica usually spent her Tuesday evenings volunteering. Glass walls overlooked downtown Atlanta's skyline, while men in $1,000 suits discussed quarterly projections and market strategies with the casual confidence of people who'd never worried about rent money. Monica sat beside Daniel at the massive conference table, her thrift store blazer and carefully pressed slacks a stark contrast to the designer everything surrounding her. She dressed as professionally as her budget allowed, but she still felt like an imposter among people who wore their wealth like armor. As you can see from the proposal, Daniel addressed his board of directors. The after-school program represents both a community investment and a long-term business strategy. We're not just funding education. We're developing future workforce talent in underserved neighborhoods. Marcus Webb sat directly across from Monica, his suspicious gaze never wavering as Daniel presented their partnership idea. Since the bank incident, Marcus had made his disapproval of Monica's presence in Daniel's life increasingly obvious, though he was careful to couch his objections in professional language. The liability concerns alone should make us reconsider, Marcus interrupted. Taking responsibility for dozens of children in a community with documented crime statistics seems unnecessarily risky. Monica felt her temper flare at the coded language that basically translated to poor kids from bad neighborhoods. She'd heard similar dismissals her entire life. People who wrote off entire communities based on zip codes and stereotypes. What specific concerns do you have about working with children? Monica asked, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. Marcus looked surprised that she'd spoken directly to him. It's not about the children themselves, of course. It's about the environment, the families, the potential for complications that could reflect poorly on the company. The room fell silent as Monica processed what Marcus had actually said, that kids like Kayla weren't worth the risk because their families weren't respectable enough for Price Industries to associate with publicly. Daniel sensed the shift in Monica's energy, the way she straightened in her chair and lifted her chin with the same defiance she'd shown in the bank. He recognized the look. Monica was about to defend her community with the fierce loyalty she brought to everything she cared about. Let me make sure I understand, Monica said, her voice carrying the controlled anger of someone who'd learned to fight with words instead of fists. You're concerned that helping children with homework and providing safe after-school care might damage your company's reputation because these kids come from working-class families? That's not what because that's exactly what you said, Monica continued, cutting Marcus off. You're worried about complications from families like mine. Families where parents work multiple jobs to pay rent, where kids qualify for free lunch programs, where a safe place to spend after-school hours could mean the difference between homework and hanging out on street corners. The boardroom buzzed with uncomfortable energy as Monica faced down men who controlled millions of dollars with nothing but her integrity and intimate knowledge of the community they were discussing in abstract terms. Daniel watched Monica command the room with quiet authority, explaining the specific needs of Atlanta's working families with the expertise of someone who'd lived that reality rather than studied it in reports. Despite the expensive suits and corporate intimidation tactics surrounding them, Monica didn't shrink or apologize for her background. When Monica outlined her vision for the program, tutoring, mentoring, life skills, college prep, community partnerships, Daniel couldn't stop watching her mouth as she spoke, the passion in her voice awakening admiration that had nothing to do with their complicated personal relationship. The formal meeting ended with grudging approval from the board, but Monica could feel the tension crackling around them as they gathered their materials. These men might fund the program, but they made it clear they considered it charity work rather than genuine investment in human potential. As the boardroom emptied, Marcus lingered behind, clearly wanting to speak with Daniel privately. Monica was gathering her papers when she heard her name mentioned in hushed tones. "She's obviously intelligent and well-intentioned," Marcus was saying, "but you have to consider how this looks. The paternity situation, the rushed partnership, bringing her into board meetings. People are going to assume you're thinking with something other than business sense." Monica's hands stilled on her documents. She'd known people would make assumptions about her relationship with Daniel, but hearing it spoken aloud in corporate language still stung. Daniel's response was immediate and sharp. "My personal relationships are not board business, Marcus. And Monica's qualifications for this project have nothing to do with anything except her expertise with the community we're trying to serve." Of course, Marcus backpedaled smoothly. "I'm just suggesting we maintain appropriate boundaries between personal and professional interests." Monica had heard enough. She stood, shouldering her bag with the dignity of someone who'd faced down skepticism her entire life. "Gentlemen, thank you for your time and consideration. I'll have the detailed program proposal ready for review by Friday." As she walked toward the door, Daniel called after her. "Monica, wait." She paused, but didn't turn around. "I'll catch the bus home. You two finish your conversation." The elevator doors closed before Daniel could follow her, leaving him alone with Marcus and the uncomfortable reality that bringing Monica into his professional world had created complications he hadn't fully anticipated. That evening, Monica was scrubbing down tables at the diner when Daniel appeared in the doorway, looking out of place among the vinyl booze and fluorescent lights in his expensive suit. The dinner rush had ended, leaving only a few regular customers nursing coffee and pie. "We need to talk," Daniel said quietly. Monica didn't stop cleaning. "About what?" "How your board thinks I'm trying to sleep my way into your business. Or how your security chief assumes I'm too ghetto to understand corporate liability." "About how we move forward from here," Daniel replied, sliding into the booth she was cleaning. "Together." The word "together" hung between them, loaded with implications neither had fully explored. Were they co-parents trying to navigate shared custody? Business partners launching a community program? Lovers figuring out if their physical attraction could become something deeper? All of the above? What happens when you try to blend two completely different worlds? When your background becomes someone else's liability? Share your experience in the comments. Monica finally looked at him, noting the exhaustion in his eyes and the slight slump in his usually perfect posture. "This is harder than either of us thought it would be." "Everything worth doing is hard," Daniel replied. "The question is whether we're going to let other people's assumptions stop us from building something good for Kayla." Monica slid into the booth across from him, finally letting herself acknowledge how much Marcus's dismissive comments had hurt. "Your board made it pretty clear that people like me don't belong in rooms like that." "Then we'll create different rooms," Daniel said simply. "Rooms where Kayla can see that her mama belongs anywhere she wants to be." The sincerity in his voice made Monica's chest tighten with emotions she wasn't ready to name. This man, this wealthy, powerful, complicated man, was willing to fight battles on her behalf that she'd been fighting alone her entire life. As they sat in the empty diner planning their next moves, Monica realized that Daniel wasn't just offering her money or resources. He was offering her partnership, respect, and something that felt dangerously close to love. The question was whether she was brave enough to accept it. She invited him to her world not as a visitor, but as a challenge. "Prove you want me, not just what I represent to your daughter." Friday evening arrived with the weight of a week's worth of tension hanging between them. Monica had spent 3 days avoiding Daniel's calls, processing the boardroom confrontation and what it meant for their future. But when he knocked on her apartment door at 7 o'clock, she realized avoidance wasn't going to solve anything. "Kayla's at my neighbor's for a sleepover," Monica said as she opened the door. "I thought we should talk without little ears listening." Daniel stepped into her apartment, noting how the familiar space felt different in the evening light. Candles flickered on the coffee table, casting warm shadows across the second-hand furniture. Monica had arranged with the skill of someone who understood that home had nothing to do with how much money you spent. "I brought dinner," Daniel said, holding up bags from a local soul food restaurant. "I figured you might be tired of cooking after working all day." The gesture was small but thoughtful. He'd chosen food from her neighborhood instead of some expensive place downtown. Monica felt some of her defensive walls soften as the smell of fried chicken and mac and cheese filled her apartment. They ate sitting on her couch, the coffee table serving as their dining room, while they navigated conversation that felt more personal than their previous discussions. Without Kayla present as a buffer, they were forced to confront the attraction that had been building between them since that first night in Daniel's hotel room. "I've been thinking about what you said," Monica began carefully, "about creating different rooms where I belong. And I realized something. You've seen my world, the diner, this apartment, the community center, but you've experienced it as an outsider looking in. If we're really going to be partners, you need to understand what it means to live here, not just visit." Daniel set down his fork, giving Monica his complete attention. "What are you proposing?" Monica's heart raced as she voiced the idea that had been forming all week. "Stay here tonight. Not in a hotel, not as a guest. Stay in my world and see what it actually feels like to be part of it." The invitation hung between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond sleeping arrangements. Monica wasn't just offering Daniel her bed. She was offering him her life, her real life, without filters or apologies or attempts to make it more palatable for his sensibilities. Daniel understood immediately that this was a test. Could he adapt to her environment the way she tried to fit into his boardroom? Would he see her world as something to be fixed or something to be respected? "Are you sure?" Daniel asked, though his eyes had already darkened with the desire that sparked between them whenever they stopped pretending their relationship was purely about Kayla's welfare. "I'm tired of being careful," Monica admitted. "Tired of trying to figure out what's appropriate and what's complicated and what other people think we should do. Tonight, I just want to be with you without all the other noise." Her apartment felt smaller with Daniel's presence filling it, but not uncomfortably so. As Monica showed him where towels were kept and cleared space in her dresser for his overnight bag, they moved around each other with an intimacy that suggested they'd been sharing space for much longer than a few weeks. When Daniel emerged from her bathroom after a shower, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual business attire, Monica felt her breath catch. Without the armor of expensive suits, he looked younger, more approachable, like someone who might actually belong in her world. "This is nice," Daniel said, settling beside her on the couch where she'd been pretending to watch television. "Quiet, peaceful. I've forgotten what that felt like." Monica turned to study his profile, noting the way his shoulders had relaxed since arriving at her apartment. "Your life is pretty intense, isn't it? All those meetings and decisions, and people wanting things from you." "It is," Daniel admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm performing a role rather than living a life. But here, with you, I feel like myself again." The honesty in his voice made Monica's chest tighten with emotions she wasn't ready to examine too closely. She'd invited him to stay as a test of his commitment to understanding her world, but she was discovering things about him that had nothing to do with money or social status. When Daniel reached for the remote, his hand brushed Monica's, creating the same electric spark that seemed to ignite every time they touched. But instead of pulling away, Monica turned her palm up, letting their fingers intertwine. "Monica," Daniel said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. "Yeah, I want you to know that what happened in the boardroom this week, that's not how I see you. That's not how I see any of this." Monica shifted closer to him on the couch, their joined hands resting on the space between them. "How do you see it?" I see a woman who's sacrificed everything for a child who needed her. I see someone who built a life from nothing and refuses to apologize for where she came from. I see the strongest person I've ever met, and I feel honored that you're willing to share your world with me." The words hit Monica like a revelation. She'd spent so much time defending herself against people who saw her as a problem to be solved or a charity case to be helped that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as strong rather than needy. "I'm not glass," Monica said, echoing something she'd been wanting to say for weeks. "Stop handling me like I'll break." Daniel's eyes darkened as he understood the invitation in her words. "Show me what you want," he said, his voice rough with desire and challenge. Monica didn't hesitate. She moved to straddle his lap, her hands framing his face as she kissed him with all the passion she'd been holding back. This time, she set the pace, she controlled the intensity, she decided how far and how fast they would go. Daniel's hands settled on her waist, letting her lead while his body responded to every touch, every movement, every soft sound she made against his mouth. When she pulled his shirt over his head and began exploring the planes of his chest with her hands and lips, he surrendered control completely. "I've wanted you like this," Monica whispered against his skin, "in my space, in my bed, with no barriers between us." They moved from the couch to her bedroom with urgent need, shedding clothes and inhibitions along the way. When Monica pushed Daniel back on her bed, the same bed where she'd worried about rent money and planned Kayla's future and dreamed of possibilities beyond her circumstances, she felt like she was reclaiming power she hadn't realized she'd given away. Their lovemaking was different from the desperate encounter in Daniel's hotel room. This was Monica's domain, her rules, her choice to be vulnerable in the space where she felt most herself. When she moved above him, setting their rhythm, Daniel's hands gripped her hips with reverent appreciation for the gift of her trust. Afterward, as they lay tangled in her sheets with the sounds of her neighborhood drifting through open windows, Monica felt something shift between them. This wasn't just physical attraction or co-parent convenience. This was something deeper, more dangerous, more real than either had expected. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "About how different this is from what I imagined when we first met," Monica replied honestly. "Different how?" Monica was quiet for a long moment, gathering courage for honesty that felt scarier than any physical intimacy they'd just shared. "I thought you'd see me as a problem to be managed or a situation to be handled. I didn't expect you to see me as me. What's more intimate, letting someone see your vulnerability or showing them your strength? Comment below with your thoughts." Daniel's arms tightened around her. "You're not a problem, Monica. You're not a situation. You're the woman I'm falling in love with. And that scares the hell out of me because I've never wanted anything as much as I want this to work." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge they could choose to cross or burn. Monica had spent her adult life avoiding emotional risks that could destabilize the life she'd built for herself and Kayla. But lying in Daniel's arms, she realized that some risks were worth taking. "I'm scared too," she whispered against his chest. "But maybe scared isn't always bad. Maybe scared means it matters." As they drifted towards sleep, Monica's phone buzzed with a text message that would shatter their peaceful bubble and remind them that the outside world was still watching, still judging, still waiting to tear down what they were trying to build. The message was from an unknown number. "Saw the news about you and Price. Some people don't know their place. Watch yourself." Daniel felt Monica tense in his arms as she read the threatening message. Their private moment was over, replaced by the harsh reality that their relationship had consequences beyond their control. But as Daniel pulled Monica closer, both of them now wide awake and alert to dangers they tried to ignore, one truth had become crystal clear. Whatever they were building together was worth fighting for. The world loves to tear down what it doesn't understand. A street girl with a rich man, a powerful CEO with a nobody from Brooklyn. But what they didn't know was that judgment only made them hold on tighter. The first photograph appeared in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Sunday Lifestyle section with a caption that made Monica's stomach turn. Tech billionaire Daniel Price spotted with mystery woman and child at local museum. New family or publicity stunt? Monica stared at the newspaper spread across her kitchen table while Kayla ate cereal and chattered about her upcoming school project on butterflies. The photo showed the three of them at the Children's Museum, Daniel lifting Kayla onto his shoulders while Monica laughed at something the little girl had said. To anyone looking at the image, they appear to be a happy family enjoying a weekend outing. The accompanying article was less kind. While it didn't mention Monica by name, it included enough details about the mystery woman's background and questions surrounding the child's parentage to make it clear that someone had been digging into their private business. Monica's phone had been ringing all morning with calls from numbers she didn't recognize, reporters, bloggers, people claiming to be old friends who suddenly wanted to reconnect. She'd stopped answering after the third caller asked if she had any comment about her relationship with Daniel Price. When Daniel arrived that afternoon to take Kayla to the park, his expression was grim. "You've seen the coverage? Kind of hard to miss," Monica replied, nodding toward the newspaper. "How did they even know to look for me? We've been careful about being seen together publicly." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Marcus thinks someone from the museum or the restaurant recognized me and tipped off a photographer. Once they had the photos, it was easy enough to identify you through facial recognition software and public records." The casual way he mentioned surveillance technology that could invade her privacy made Monica realize how different their worlds really were. Daniel lived his life knowing that cameras might be watching, that his movements were newsworthy, that his personal relationships were considered public entertainment. Monica had never had to worry about such things until now. "There's more," Daniel said quietly, glancing at Kayla to make sure she wasn't listening. "The story is gaining traction online. Social media, gossip blogs, entertainment websites. People are speculating about everything. Our relationship, Kayla's paternity, your motivations for being with me." Monica felt the familiar clench of anxiety in her chest. She'd grown up being judged by teachers, social workers, and neighbors who assumed the worst about families like hers. But this was different. This was judgment on a massive scale from complete strangers who thought they had the right to dissect her life for entertainment. "What are they saying?" Monica asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Daniel hesitated. "Some of it is supportive. Comments about how happy we look together, how good I am with Kayla. But there's also—" He trailed off, clearly reluctant to continue. "Tell me, there are people questioning your motives, calling you a gold digger, suggesting you're using Kayla to trap me into a relationship. Some of the comments about your background are pretty harsh." Monica's hands clenched into fists. She'd expected this kind of reaction, had prepared herself for it mentally, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the chest. "And what about you?" Monica asked quietly. "What are they saying about the great Daniel Price dating someone like me?" "Monica!" "No, tell me. I need to know what we're dealing with." Daniel ran his hands through his hair. A gesture Monica had learned meant he was struggling with something. "They're questioning my judgment, suggesting I'm having some kind of midlife crisis or that this is a publicity stunt to improve my public image. Some of the business blogs are speculating about how this might affect stock prices and investor confidence." The weight of his words settled over Monica like a heavy blanket. Her presence in Daniel's life wasn't just causing personal complications. It was potentially affecting his business, his reputation, his carefully constructed public image. "Maybe we should slow things down," Monica said quietly, "until the attention dies down." "Absolutely not." Daniel's response was immediate and firm. "I'm not going to let gossip and speculation dictate how we live our lives." But Monica could see the strain in his eyes, the way he kept checking his phone for new developments, the tension in his shoulders that suggested he was carrying more stress than he wanted to admit. That afternoon, as they tried to maintain normalcy by taking Kayla to the park, Monica became acutely aware of people staring. A mother at the playground whispered to her friend while pointing in their direction. A jogger slowed down to get a better look at them. Someone not so discreetly took a photo with their phone. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as they walked from Daniel's car to the park entrance. Reporters shouting questions that reduced their story to scandal and sensation. Is the child yours, Mr. Price? How long have you two been together? What's your response to allegations that this is a setup? Daniel placed his hand on the small of Monica's back, not to guide her, but to ground himself as they pushed through the crowd of photographers and reporters who had somehow discovered their afternoon plans. No comment, Daniel said firmly, but the cameras kept clicking, the questions kept coming, and Monica felt like she was drowning in the chaos of attention she'd never asked for or wanted. Kayla pressed closer to Monica's side, confused and frightened by the adult drama surrounding her. Mama, why are all these people yelling? Because some grown-ups don't have anything better to do than bother other families, Monica replied, lifting Kayla into her arms and walking faster toward the park's interior where hopefully the reporters wouldn't follow. But even inside the park, they couldn't escape the stares and whispers. Monica caught fragments of conversation as other parents recognized them from the news coverage. That's the woman from the article. Can you believe she thinks she can just... Those poor children caught up in adult drama. The last comment hit Monica the hardest because it contained a grain of truth she'd been trying to ignore. Kayla was caught up in adult drama that Monica had helped create by getting involved with Daniel in the first place. Have you ever been judged or misunderstood for your relationship? How did you handle it when people made assumptions about your motivations? Share your story in the comments. That evening, after they'd retreated to the safety of Monica's apartment, Daniel received a phone call that changed the tone of their entire situation. Marcus was calling with news that the media attention had escalated beyond gossip column fodder. Several business publications are running stories questioning your judgment, Marcus reported, his voice carrying through Daniel's phone speaker. The board is concerned about potential impact on upcoming merger negotiations. There's also been increased scrutiny of the after-school program proposal. Some investors are wondering if it's a legitimate business venture or a way to funnel money to your personal interests. Monica felt sick hearing her community program reduced to personal interests, as if helping children was somehow less important than corporate profits. Set up a board meeting for tomorrow morning, Daniel said curtly. We'll address their concerns directly. After Daniel hung up, silence settled over Monica's apartment like a heavy fog. Kayla was in her room, playing quietly while the adults processed the growing complications of their relationship. This is affecting your business, Monica said finally. My business will survive media speculation. But will we? The question came out quieter than Monica intended, but it carried the weight of all her fears about their different worlds colliding in ways that might destroy them both. Daniel moved to sit beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. We will if we don't let other people's opinions define what we're building. Monica wanted to believe him, but she could see the stress lines around his eyes, the way he kept checking his phone for new developments, the careful way he'd navigated the reporters that afternoon. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about his company, his employees, his responsibilities to people who depended on him for their livelihoods. What if loving me costs you everything? Monica whispered. Then it's a price I'm willing to pay, Daniel replied without hesitation. But I don't think it will come to that. People have short attention spans. Something else will become the hot gossip topic, and this will all fade away. Monica hoped he was right, but something told her this was just the beginning of their troubles, not the end. Later that night, as they lay in Monica's bed listening to the sounds of her neighborhood, sirens in the distance, music from a nearby apartment, the normal soundtrack of her life, Daniel received a text message that made him sit up abruptly. What is it? Monica asked, noting his expression. Daniel showed her the screen. The message was from an unknown number, but the threat was crystal clear. Some people don't know their place. Your business and your woman would be safer if you remembered yours. Monica felt cold fear creep up her spine as she read the words. This wasn't just media attention or public gossip. This was something darker, more personal, more dangerous. We need to call the police, Monica said. And tell them what? That someone sent a vaguely threatening text? They won't be able to do anything without more specific threats or actions. But Daniel was already reaching for his phone to call Marcus, to arrange for security, to take precautions that Monica had never needed to consider in her previous life. As Daniel spoke in hushed tones about security protocols and threat assessment, Monica realized that loving him had brought dangers in her life that she never imagined. The question now wasn't whether they could handle public scrutiny. It was whether they could survive whatever was coming next. When he mentioned creating a foundation focused on medical access for her community, something shifted in Monica's chest. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked carefully. His answer wasn't just about buildings and funding. It was about legacy, future permanence. Things she'd never dare to want. But as threatening messages appeared on both their phones that night, Monica wondered if someone else had very different plans for their future. She grew up believing survival was the best she could hope for. Until the day someone handed her the power to change the system that nearly broke her. The community center buzzed with voices and hope as Monica outlined their plan to a room packed with parents, teachers, and neighborhood leaders who had watched their children struggle with limited resources for too long. Despite the media attention swirling around her personal life, Monica had insisted on moving forward with the after-school program presentation. These families needed solutions more than she needed privacy. "This isn't charity," Monica told the room, her voice steady despite the chaos of the past week. "This is investment in our children's futures. This is what happens when we refuse to accept that some kids matter less than others just because of their zip code." The audience responded with applause and nods of agreement. These were people who understood struggle, who had watched talented children get overlooked because they couldn't afford private tutors or SAT prep courses. Monica's vision of comprehensive after-school support, homework help, college preparation, life skills training, mentorship programs, represented hope for families who had learned not to expect much help from anyone. Daniel stood at the back of the room, watching Monica command the crowd with natural authority and genuine passion. She belonged here in a way she'd never quite fit in his corporate boardroom. These were her people, her community, her mission, and seeing her in her element reminded him why he'd fallen for her in the first place. But the threatening messages from the previous night weighed heavily on his mind. Security personnel he'd hired were stationed discreetly around the building, and Marcus was monitoring social media for any escalation of negative attention that might target Monica or Kayla. When the presentation ended and community members lined up to volunteer or ask questions, Monica felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced since taking custody of Kayla 6 years ago. This was bigger than just her and Daniel's relationship. This was about creating lasting change that would outlive whatever happened between them personally. "You were incredible up there," Daniel said as the crowd began to disperse. "I've seen corporate executives who couldn't command a room like that." Monica smiled, feeling more confident than she had all week. "This is what I'm good at. This is where I belong." "I know," Daniel replied, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "And I want to make sure you have every resource you need to make this vision a reality." As they walked home that evening, Kayla skipping between them and chattering about her day at school, Monica felt like they'd turned a corner. The media attention was still there, but they'd proven they could work together on something meaningful despite the outside noise. But when they arrived at Monica's apartment building, her sense of optimism crashed into harsh reality. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, was waiting on the front steps with a stern expression and official-looking papers in his hands. "Monica, we need to talk," he said without preamble. Monica's stomach dropped. She was current on rent now. Daniel had insisted on helping with that despite her protests, so this couldn't be about money. "What's this about, Mr. Peterson?" "It's about the circus you've brought to my property," he replied, gesturing toward several people with cameras lingering across the street. Reporters knocking on doors, asking questions about you and your situation. Other tenants complaining about the attention, the noise, the disruption to their quiet lives. Monica felt Daniel tense beside her, his protective instincts flaring as he recognized where this conversation was heading. "I pay my rent on time," Monica said carefully. "I follow building rules. I've never caused problems for other tenants." "And I appreciate that," Mr. Peterson replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But the lease agreement includes a clause about activities that disturb other residents or bring negative attention to the property. The media coverage, the photographers, the reporters, it's affecting my other tenants' quality of life. Daniel stepped forward, his voice controlled, but carrying the authority of someone accustomed to negotiating difficult situations. What exactly are you asking? Mr. Peterson looked between them, clearly uncomfortable but determined to handle what he saw as a growing problem. I'm giving you 30 days' notice to find alternative housing arrangements. I'm sorry, Monica, but I can't have this continuing indefinitely. Kayla, who had been listening with the sharp attention children develop when adult conversations turn serious, moved closer to Monica. Mama, are we in trouble? No, baby, Monica replied quickly, though her heart was racing with the implications of what Mr. Peterson had just said. We're just going to find a new place to live. But finding affordable housing in Atlanta was difficult under normal circumstances. Finding it while being followed by photographers and reporters would be nearly impossible. And a 30-day timeline meant Monica would have to make decisions about her living situation while still processing the dramatic changes in her relationship with Daniel. What would you change if you suddenly had the resources to make a difference? What cause means everything to you? Share your vision below. That night, after Kayla was asleep, Monica and Daniel sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by apartment listings and rental applications, trying to find solutions to problems that seemed to multiply faster than they could address them. You could move in with me, Daniel said quietly, voicing the option they'd both been thinking about but hadn't discussed. Monica looked up from the rental listings, meeting his eyes across the table. That feels like a big step. It is a big step, Daniel agreed. But maybe it's time for big steps. We're already co-parenting Kayla, working together on the foundation, dealing with media attention as a couple. Moving in together might simplify some things instead of complicating them. Monica considered his words carefully. Living with Daniel would solve her immediate housing problem and provide security for Kayla that she'd never been able to offer before. But it would also mean crossing a line from independent single mother to what exactly? Partner? Girlfriend? Something more serious that they hadn't defined yet? What about Kayla? Monica asked. This would be a huge change for her too. Kids are more adaptable than adults usually give them credit for, Daniel replied. And she's already comfortable with me. She might actually enjoy having both her parents under the same roof for the first time in her life. The phrase, both her parents, hit Monica with unexpected emotion. Despite the DNA confirmation and legal documents, she sometimes still felt like Daniel was the real parent while she was just the caretaker who'd stepped in when needed. But hearing him acknowledge them as equal parents made her realize how much she needed that validation. There's something else, Daniel continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. I wanted to wait until after the community presentation, but given everything that's happening, maybe now is the right time. Monica opened the envelope to find legal documents that made her breath catch. Daniel had established a foundation in both their names, the Monica and Daniel Price Foundation for Educational Equity, with her listed as co-founder and executive director. You made this official, Monica whispered, scanning the papers that gave her equal authority over the program they'd been planning. I made us official, Daniel corrected, as partners in this work, and hopefully as partners in other areas of our lives too. Monica felt tears prick her eyes as she realized what Daniel had done. He hadn't just funded her vision or attached his name to her project. He created a legal structure that recognized her expertise and gave her power to make decisions without needing his approval for every detail. The salary listed here, Monica said, pointing to a number that was triple what she made at the diner. This is too much. It's exactly what someone with your qualifications and responsibilities should earn, Daniel replied firmly. And it means you'll never have to worry about rent or utilities or whether you can afford to give Kayla everything she needs. As Monica processed the life-changing implications of Daniel's offer, financial security, meaningful work, partnership in something bigger than herself, her phone rang with news that would test all their plans. The caller ID showed her neighbor's number, and Mrs. Rodriguez sounded panicked when Monica answered. Monica, something's wrong with your mama, Mrs. Rodriguez said urgently. The ambulance just took her to Grady Hospital. You need to come now. Monica's mother, who had been battling diabetes and heart problems for years, had apparently collapsed at her Birmingham apartment. The doctors weren't sure if she'd suffered a heart attack, a diabetic emergency, or something else entirely. As Monica grabbed her keys and purse, preparing to drive to Birmingham in the middle of the night, Daniel was already reaching for his own jacket. "I'm coming with you," he said simply. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Daniel interrupted. "We're family now, Monica. Your crisis is my crisis. Your mama is Kayla's grandmother and my, whatever this makes us to each other. We handle this together." The newspaper headlines seemed innocent enough. CEO's new project and new love. But the details inside about Monica's background made her blood run cold. Someone had been digging, exposing everything she'd kept private, including her mother's health struggles and financial problems. As they raced toward Birmingham, with Kayla sleeping in the back seat, Monica wondered if loving Daniel had put everyone she cared about in danger, or if his crisis might finally prove they were strong enough to weather any storm together. The world loves to tear down what it doesn't understand. A street girl with a rich man, a powerful CEO with a nobody from Birmingham. But what they didn't know was that judgment only made them hold on tighter. The fluorescent lights in Grady Hospital's emergency room cast harsh shadows across worried faces as Monica paced the waiting area, her hands shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. Daniel sat with Kayla curled up in his lap, the little girl finally dozing after hours of asking when Grandma would be okay. Monica's mother, Dorothy Davis, had suffered a massive heart attack complicated by her diabetes. The doctors had stabilized her, but the next 48 hours would determine whether she'd recover fully or face permanent complications that would require long-term care Monica couldn't afford. "Mrs. Davis?" A tired-looking doctor approached them, his scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. "I'm Dr. Martinez. Your mother is stable for now, but her condition is serious. The heart attack caused significant damage, and her diabetes has made recovery more complicated." Monica's legs felt weak as she processed the medical terminology that basically meant her mother might not make it through the week. "What are her options?" Daniel asked, his arm around Monica's waist as she swayed slightly. "Surgery is possible, but expensive and risky given her age and medical history. There's also experimental treatment that might help with the heart damage, but insurance typically doesn't cover those procedures." Monica's heart sank. She'd been down this road before with medical bills that could bankrupt a family. Even with Daniel's resources, she couldn't expect him to pay for her mother's experimental treatments. That felt like crossing a line from partnership into dependency she wasn't ready for. But before Monica could voice her concerns, Daniel was already asking detailed questions about treatment options, success rates, and costs with the focused intensity he brought to business decisions. "Money isn't the issue," Daniel told Dr. Martinez firmly. "What give her the best chance of full recovery?" Monica pulled Daniel aside as the doctor went to check on other patients. "You can't just make decisions about my mother's care without discussing it with me first." "I'm not making decisions," Daniel replied gently. "I'm gathering information so we can make informed choices together." "But Monica, if money is the only thing standing between your mother and the best possible treatment, then money isn't a consideration." The weight of his words hit Monica hard. This wasn't charity or pity. This was Daniel treating her family crisis as his own, extending the same protective instincts to her mother that he'd shown to Kayla. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as reporters discovered their presence at the hospital, shouting questions that reduced Dorothy's medical emergency to tabloid entertainment. "Is this a publicity stunt? How convenient that your mother-in-law gets sick right when you need sympathy. What's your response to critics who say this is all staged?" Daniel placed his hand on the small of Monica's back, not to guide her, but to ground himself as they pushed through the crowd of photographers who had somehow tracked them down even in their moment of crisis. "These people have no shame," Monica muttered, clutching Kayla closer as they navigated the chaos. But the media attention brought unexpected support too. The community center families they'd met the previous week began showing up with food, offers to babysit Kayla, and emotional support that reminded Monica she wasn't facing this alone. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with a container of homemade soup and a fierce expression. Those reporters better not bother you while you're dealing with family business. Mija, we got your back. Other neighbors followed. People who had watched Monica struggle as a single mother, who had seen her sacrifice for Kayla, who understood that family emergencies didn't care about publicity or social media drama. Have you ever been judged or misunderstood during a family crisis? When people made assumptions about your pain for their entertainment? Share your experience in the comments. That evening, as Dorothy's condition remained stable but critical, Monica found herself alone with Daniel in the hospital's family room. Kayla was sleeping on a small couch, exhausted from the emotional day. "I never expected this," Monica said quietly. "The heart attack? No, this." Monica gestured between them, encompassing the way Daniel had dropped everything to drive to Birmingham, how he'd handled medical consultations like family business, the way he'd protected them from reporters while coordinating with hospital staff. "You being here, being part of this mess, caring about my mama like she matters to you too." Daniel reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers with the familiarity of a gesture that had become natural between them. "She does matter to me, because she matters to you, and you matter to me more than I know how to express." Even with all the complications, the media attention, the business pressure, the way our different worlds keep crashing into each other. "Especially because of the complications," Daniel replied. "Easy relationships don't teach you anything about what you're really made of. Hard relationships, relationships worth fighting for, those show you what love actually means." Monica felt tears prick her eyes as Daniel voiced something she'd been afraid to acknowledge. They were fighting for something worth keeping, something that went beyond co-parenting or physical attraction or convenient partnership. "I love you," Monica whispered, the words coming out before her brain could stop them. "I love you too," Daniel replied without hesitation. "And I love Kayla, and I'm growing to love your mother because she raised a woman who saved my life by walking into that bank with a necklace that brought us together." Their first "I love you" exchange happened in a hospital waiting room surrounded by medical equipment and family crisis, but Monica couldn't imagine it happening any other way. Their entire relationship had been built on handling difficult situations together, and this felt like the ultimate test of whether they could weather anything life threw at them. When the doctor suggested experimental treatment for Dorothy that would cost more than Monica made in 5 years, the decision felt overwhelming. But Daniel's response was immediate. "Schedule it. Whatever she needs, whenever she needs it. Dorothy is family now." As Monica signed consent forms for her mother's treatment, she realized that Daniel hadn't just offered financial support. He'd offered something more valuable. He'd offered to share the burden of caring for people she loved, to make her problems his problems, to build a life where nobody had to handle crisis alone. But that night, as they prepared to spend another evening at the hospital, Monica received a phone call that would test every assumption about their future together. The caller identified himself as a lawyer representing Daniel's corporate board. "Ms. Davis, we need to discuss the situation between you and Mr. Price. The board has concerns about the impact of this relationship on company stability and stockholder confidence." Monica's blood ran cold as she realized that while she'd been focused on her mother's health crisis, Daniel's business associates had been planning their own intervention. "What exactly are you saying?" Monica asked. "We're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement to end your relationship with Mr. Price and relocate with your daughter somewhere far from Atlanta. Enough money to ensure your mother receives the best medical care and your daughter has every educational opportunity, without the complications of maintaining a relationship that's clearly causing problems for everyone involved." The offer hung in the air like poison disguised as medicine. Financial security for her family in exchange for walking away from a man she'd just admitted she loved. As Monica listened to the lawyer outline an offer that would solve every financial problem she'd ever had, she realized that some people would always see her as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be valued. The question now was whether Daniel knew about this attempted buyout, or if his own people were working behind his back to destroy the relationship he was fighting to build. When she confronted Daniel about the corporate board's offer, his expression told her everything she needed to know. He was as shocked and furious as she was. They had no right, Daniel said through clenched teeth. No authority to make offers on my behalf. But Monica wondered if the damage was already done. Even if Daniel fought his own board to defend their relationship, would they always be battling other people's assumptions about what they deserved to have together? 1 year ago, she stood in a clinic ready to sell her body to save her mother. Today, she stood at a crossroads where she had to choose between financial security and the love that had changed her life forever. The corporate boardroom felt different this time, hostile instead of merely unwelcoming. Monica sat beside Daniel at the same conference table where she'd first presented the after-school program. But now she faced men who saw her as a threat to be eliminated rather than a partner to be respected. Marcus Webb led the intervention with the cold efficiency of someone conducting a business transaction. Mr. Price, the board has voted. Your personal relationship with Ms. Davis has created unacceptable risks for Price Industries. Stock prices have dropped 12% since the media coverage began. 3 major clients have expressed concerns about our corporate stability. Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. My personal life has nothing to do with company performance or client relationships, doesn't it? Board member Richard Carlson leaned forward, his expensive suit and condescending tone representing everything Monica had learned to expect from Daniel's world. When your personal choices affect public perception of our brand, they become business concerns. Monica had remained silent during the first part of the meeting, but Carlson's dismissive tone triggered her defensive instincts. What exactly are you suggesting? We're offering you a solution that benefits everyone involved, Carlson replied smoothly. Enough money to ensure your mother receives world-class medical care, your daughter attends the best private schools, and you can relocate somewhere that offers better opportunities for your background. The coded language made Monica's stomach turn. My background. A fresh start. Marcus interjected quickly. Somewhere without the media attention and complications that have made this situation so difficult for everyone. Monica looked around the table at faces that radiated wealth and privilege. Men who had never worried about rent, money, or medical bills, or whether their children would have the same opportunities as other kids. To them, she was a problem that could be solved with money rather than a person who deserved respect. How much? Monica asked quietly. Daniel's head snapped toward her, surprise and hurt flickering across his expression. Monica! No, I want to hear the number. Monica continued, her voice gaining strength. What's the price tag for walking away from the father of my daughter? For abandoning the foundation we built together? For pretending the last few months never happened? Carlson named a figure that made Monica's breath catch. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes of waitressing. Enough to solve every financial problem her family had ever faced. That's generous, Monica said finally. But here's what you don't understand about women like me. We don't run from fights, especially when we're fighting for family. And we sure don't let rich men decide what we deserve to have just because they think their money makes them more important than our hearts. The boardroom fell silent as Monica stood, gathering her dignity around her like armor. I'm not for sale, gentlemen. Not my relationship, not my daughter's father, not the life we're building together. If Daniel's stock price is more important to you than his happiness, that says something about your values, not mine. Daniel rose beside her, his decision clear without words being spoken. The board can vote however they want, but they can't vote on who I love or how I choose to live my life. Daniel, think about what you're risking, Marcus warned. Your position, your company, everything you've built over the past 15 years. I've already thought about it, Daniel replied. And I've realized that none of it means anything without the people who make life worth living. The vote was swift and brutal. Daniel was removed as CEO by a board majority, though he retained his stock ownership and personal wealth. Walking out of the Price Industries building for the last time as an employee felt surreal, but Monica noticed that Daniel's shoulders seemed lighter rather than heavier. Do you regret it? Monica asked as they sat in his car outside the building where he'd spent most of his adult life. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to realize what actually matters, Daniel replied. Companies can be rebuilt. Money can be re-earned. But finding someone who loves you for who you are rather than what you can provide, that's irreplaceable. That afternoon, they returned to Birmingham to check on Dorothy, who had responded well to the experimental treatment Daniel had insisted on funding. The older woman looked frail in her hospital bed, but her eyes were alert and her voice was strong when she spoke to them. "I heard about what happened with your job," Dorothy said to Daniel. "You sure that was worth it?" "Yes, ma'am," Daniel replied without hesitation. "Your daughter and granddaughter are worth everything I have and more." Dorothy studied him for a long moment, the same assessing look Monica had inherited. "Good answer. But what you gonna do now? Can't just live off love and good intentions." Daniel smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Monica had seen from him in days. "I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. Start something that matters more than stock prices and board meetings." What would your answer be if someone offered you money to walk away from love, when financial security conflicts with emotional fulfillment? Tell me in the comments what you would choose. That evening, Monica found Daniel in the hospital's roof garden, looking out over Birmingham's skyline with the contemplative expression he wore when processing major life changes. "Second thoughts?" Monica asked, joining him at the railing. "Not about us," Daniel replied immediately, "but I keep thinking about what comes next. I've never not had a corporate structure, board meetings, quarterly projections. It's weird to suddenly have complete freedom to choose what I do with my time. Scary or exciting? Both," Daniel admitted. "But mostly exciting because I get it figured out with you." Monica leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence beside her. "The foundation is still ours, regardless of what your former board thinks. We can build something that actually changes lives instead of just generating profits. Is that what you want? To build something together that lasts longer than both of us?" Monica turned to face him, noting the vulnerability in his question. "I want to build a life with you that Kayla can be proud of. I want her to grow up seeing what it looks like when people choose love over fear, when they fight for what matters, even when it's hard." Daniel's hands framed her face with the tenderness that had become familiar between them. "Then that's what we'll do. Together." As they kissed on the hospital rooftop, with Birmingham's lights spreading below them like scattered diamonds, Monica realized that losing Daniel's corporate position might have been the best thing that could have happened to their relationship. Now, they could build something truly their own, without other people's expectations or limitations defining their choices. But when they returned to Dorothy's room, they found the older woman sitting up in bed with a newspaper in her hands and an expression of concern on her face. "You two need to see this," Dorothy said, holding up the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's evening edition. The headline made Monica's blood run cold. "Billionaire's baby mama drama. Price Industries stock soars after CEO ousted over controversial romance." The article painted their love story as corporate drama, suggesting that Daniel's removal had been a calculated business decision that stockholders were celebrating. But worse than the financial coverage were the quotes from unnamed sources claiming that Monica had always been after his money and that the relationship had been a distraction from day one. Reading the article felt like watching someone else's life being dissected for entertainment, their private struggles reduced to gossip and speculation. "They're never going to leave us alone, are they?" Monica asked quietly. "Probably not," Daniel admitted. "But here's what I've learned about media attention. It only has the power you give it. We can't control what other people say about us, but we can control how we respond to it." Dorothy folded the newspaper with the decisive gesture of someone who'd made up her mind about something. "Then I guess it's time to set the record straight." "Mama, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about telling our story ourselves instead of letting other people make up lies about who we are and what we mean to each other," Dorothy replied with surprising strength for someone who'd nearly died 3 days earlier. As Monica processed her mother's suggestion, she realized that maybe the time for hiding and defensive responses was over. Maybe it was time to take control of their own narrative and show the world what their love actually looked like instead of letting strangers define it for them. But first, there was something more important than media coverage to address: the future they wanted to build together and whether they were ready to make it official in ways that would silence the critics once and for all. She once believed love was a luxury she couldn't afford. until the day the richest man she knew offered her the only thing that mattered: choice. The rooftop garden of Daniel's penthouse apartment spread out under the Atlanta sky, string lights creating a canopy of soft gold against the city skyline below. Monica stood at the edge of the terrace, watching traffic move through downtown streets like tiny lights painting patterns in the darkness. 3 months had passed since Daniel left Price Industries, and their life together had found a rhythm that surprised them both with its normalcy. He consulted for tech startups while developing plans for their educational foundation. Monica had left the diner to work full-time on the after-school program, which now served 45 children in their first location. Kayla had adapted to their blended living situation with the flexibility of childhood, splitting time between Daniel's penthouse and Monica's new apartment, a compromise that gave Monica independence while maintaining their family connection. Dorothy had recovered well enough to return home to Birmingham, though she visited Atlanta regularly to check on her grandbaby and the man who'd saved her life with experimental treatment she could never have afforded alone. "Mama, come see what we built." Kayla's voice called from the living room, where she and Daniel were constructing an elaborate fort out of couch cushions and blankets. Monica smiled, noting how naturally Kayla had begun including both adults in her daily adventures. The little girl who had once been content with just Monica's attention now expected both her parents to participate in bedtime stories, homework help, and weekend activities. When Monica joined them in the living room, she found Daniel and Kayla deep in serious discussion about proper fort engineering. Daniel's expensive shirt was wrinkled, his hair messed up from crawling around on the floor, and he looked happier than Monica had ever seen him in corporate settings. "Daddy Daniel says if we put another pillow here, the roof won't fall down," Kayla explained, pointing to their architectural masterpiece. "Daddy Daniel is very smart about building things," Monica agreed, catching Daniel's eye over Kayla's head and sharing a moment of parental pride that felt completely natural. After Kayla was tucked into bed with promises that the fort would remain standing until morning, Monica and Daniel found themselves alone on the terrace with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd learned to appreciate quiet moments together. "I have something for you," Daniel said quietly, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Monica's breath caught as she recognized the significance of the moment. They talked about marriage in abstract terms, acknowledging that they wanted a future together, but this felt suddenly very real and very present. "Before you open it," Daniel continued, "I need you to know that I'm not asking you to be mine. I'm asking if we could be each other's, equal partners, building something neither of us could create alone." Monica's hands shook slightly as she opened the box to reveal a ring that took her breath away. Not because of its size or obvious expense, but because of its thoughtful design. A classic solitaire setting with small stones flanking the center diamond that Daniel explained were Kayla's birthstone and one representing Monica's birthday. "It's not just an engagement ring," Daniel said softly. "It's a family ring. The 3 of us connected forever." Monica felt tears prick her eyes as she understood what Daniel had created. Not just a symbol of their romantic commitment, but recognition of the family unit they'd built with Kayla at its center. "The marriage I'm proposing isn't about you joining my world or me joining yours," Daniel continued. "It's about creating our world, where Kayla grows up seeing what partnership looks like when 2 people choose each other every day." Monica looked down at the ring, then up at Daniel's face where she could see hope and vulnerability mixed with the quiet confidence she'd come to love. "What would your answer be?" Monica asked softly. "My answer to what?" "To a proposal that honors your independence while offering true partnership. To someone who sees your strength instead of your struggles, who wants to build something lasting instead of just solving problems with money." Daniel smiled, understanding that Monica was testing whether he truly grasped what he was offering. "My answer would be yes, without hesitation, because finding someone who sees your worth before you fully believe in it yourself is the rarest gift in the world." Monica slipped the ring on her finger, feeling its weight as both promise and possibility. "Then my answer is yes too. Yes to partnership. Yes to building something that lasts. Yes to showing Kayla what love looks like when it's based on respect instead of rescue." Their kiss tasted like wine and possibility, like the future they'd been afraid to hope for, but were finally brave enough to claim. What does your ideal commitment look like? When someone proposes partnership instead of possession, share your thoughts in the comments below. Later that evening, as they called Dorothy to share the engagement news, Monica felt a completion she'd never expected to experience. Not the fairy tale ending where the prince saves the princess, but something better. Two adults choosing to build a life together based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. About time, Dorothy said when they broke the news, though her voice carried warmth and approval. That man's been family since the day he paid for my hospital bills without being asked. Now it's just official. Kayla's reaction was pure 6-year-old excitement. Does this mean we're getting married? All of us. It means Daddy Daniel and I are getting married, and you'll be part of the ceremony, Monica explained. You're the most important person in both our lives. Can I wear a pretty dress and throw flowers? You can wear the prettiest dress we can find and throw all the flowers you want, Daniel assured her. As they tucked Kayla back into bed with promises of wedding planning adventures, Monica realized that their engagement represented more than just personal commitment. It was a statement to everyone who'd questioned their relationship, doubted their motives, or assumed their different backgrounds made love impossible. But when Daniel's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, their celebration took on a more serious tone. The message was brief but clear, saw the engagement announcement online. Some people never learn their place. Congratulations won't protect you forever. Daniel showed Monica the message, and they both recognized it as an escalation of the threats they'd been receiving sporadically since their relationship became public. We should call the police, Monica said, though she knew from experience that vague threats were difficult to prosecute. I've already been in contact with law enforcement, Daniel replied. But I think it's time we stopped hiding from whoever's been sending these messages. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time we take control of our story completely. Not just engagement announcements and foundation press releases, but the whole truth about who we are and why we're together. Monica understood immediately what Daniel was suggesting. Instead of defensive responses to media coverage and anonymous threats, they could tell their story themselves. The real story of how a necklace brought them together, how love grew from complicated circumstances, and how they'd chosen each other despite every obstacle placed in their path. You want to go public? Completely public. I want to show the world what we actually look like instead of letting other people create fictional versions of our relationship, Daniel replied. And I want whoever's been threatening us to understand that we're not afraid of them or anyone else who thinks they can intimidate us into hiding. As Monica considered the implications of sharing their private story with the world, she realized that transparency might be their best defense against people who thrived on secrets and assumptions. But first, there was a wedding to plan and a future to build. A future that would prove love doesn't care about bank accounts, zip codes, or other people's opinions about who deserves happiness. The question now was whether they were ready to show the world what their love actually looked like when it refused to apologize for existing. The body she once offered as sacrifice now created life by choice, the ultimate testament to what happens when love sees dignity instead of desperation. 6 months after their engagement, Monica stood in the bridal suite of a small church in Birmingham, the same church where her sister Jasmine had been buried 7 years earlier. The full circle symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. They were celebrating new beginnings in the place where Monica's journey as Kayla's mother had truly started. The wedding dress Monica had chosen was simple but elegant. Nothing like the designer gowns Daniel could have afforded, but everything like the woman she'd become. Dorothy sat in a nearby chair, fully recovered and insisting on helping with final preparations despite Monica's protest that she should be resting. "Stop fussing, child," Dorothy said, adjusting Monica's veil with the careful precision of someone who'd been waiting years to see her daughter this happy. "You look beautiful, and that man out there is about to faint from nervousness." Through the window, Monica could see guests arriving. An unusual mix of corporate executives, community center families, hospital staff who'd cared for Dorothy, and neighbors from both Birmingham and Atlanta. Daniel had insisted on inviting everyone who'd been part of their story, regardless of social status or background. Kayla burst through the door wearing a pale pink dress that made her look like a fairy tale princess, her excitement barely contained. "Mama, Daddy Daniel keeps asking if you change your mind, and Mrs. Rodriguez said to tell you the flowers look perfect, and everybody's here." Monica laughed, pulling Kayla into a hug that was careful not to wrinkle either of their dresses. "Tell Daddy Daniel I haven't changed my mind, and I'll be there in 5 minutes." But as Monica took a final look in the mirror, preparing to walk down the aisle toward the man who'd changed her life in ways she never could have imagined, her phone buzzed with a message that made her blood run cold. The text was from the same unknown number that had been sending threats. Last chance to reconsider. Some mistakes can't be undone. Dorothy noticed Monica's expression immediately. "What's wrong, baby?" Monica showed her mother the message, and Dorothy's face hardened with the protective anger of someone who'd watched her daughter fight battles alone for too long. "You know what you're going to do about that?" Dorothy asked. "Tell Daniel and let security handle it?" "No, Dorothy replied firmly. "You're going to walk down that aisle, marry the man you love, and show whoever sent that message that Davis women don't scare easy. We've survived worse than anonymous cowards with cell phones." Monica felt her mother's strength flow into her, the same resilience that had carried their family through poverty, loss, and every obstacle life had thrown at them. Whoever was sending threats clearly didn't understand the kind of people they were dealing with. The ceremony itself was perfect in its simplicity. When the church doors opened and Monica walked down the aisle, she saw Daniel waiting at the altar with an expression of such pure love and gratitude that everything else, the threats, the media attention, the corporate drama, faded into insignificance. Kayla walked ahead of Monica as flower girl, taking her job seriously as she scattered rose petals with careful precision. When she reached the altar, she took her place between Monica and Daniel, symbolically completing their family circle. "Friends and family," the minister began, "we're gathered here today not just to witness a marriage, but to celebrate a love story that proves the best things in life often come from the most unexpected places." The vows they'd written were personal and honest, acknowledging the complicated path that had brought them together and the commitment they were making to face whatever challenges lay ahead as a unified team. "Monica," Daniel said when it was his turn to speak, "you taught me that love isn't about rescue. It's about recognition. You didn't need me to save you. You needed me to see you for who you already were. And in seeing you, I found myself." Monica's vows brought tears to several guests' eyes. "Daniel, you saw dignity where I'd only seen desperation, strength where I'd only seen struggle. You didn't try to fix my life, you offered to share it. And that made all the difference." When a minister pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was witnessed by everyone who'd been part of their journey. From the community center families who'd supported Monica through single motherhood to the former Price Industries employees who'd respected Daniel's choice to prioritize love over corporate approval. The reception was held at the community center where they'd first presented their foundation plans, transformed with flowers and lights into a celebration space that honored both their backgrounds. Daniel danced with Dorothy, listened to stories from Monica's childhood friends, and proved he could fit into her world as comfortably as she'd learned to navigate his. But the most meaningful moment came when Kayla stood on a chair to make her own toast. "My mama and daddy love each other, and they love me, and we're going to take care of each other forever. Also, we might get a dog." The laughter that followed Kayla's speech was warm and genuine, the kind of joy that comes from watching people you care about find happiness despite difficult odds. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a family trip to Disney World that had been Kayla's one non-negotiable wedding request, Monica received one final text from their anonymous threatener. This message was different. "You won. I'm done." Monica showed Daniel the message, and they both felt a weight lift from their shoulders. Whoever had been trying to intimidate them had apparently realized that their love was stronger than fear, their commitment deeper than any attempt to drive them apart. "Think we'll hear from them again?" Monica asked. "Probably not," Daniel replied. "Bullies usually give up when they realize their targets won't be intimidated. as they drove away from Birmingham toward their new life together. Monica reflected on how much had changed since that day in the Atlanta bank when Daniel first noticed Kayla's necklace. She'd gone from a struggling single mother to a wife, business partner, and co-founder of a foundation that was already changing lives in their community. The nursery walls in their new home, a house they'd chosen together in a neighborhood that bridged their two worlds, glowed soft yellow in the morning light, hand-painted stars spanning the ceiling in patterns that told the story of how 3 separate lives had become one family. 6 weeks after their wedding, Monica discovered she was pregnant, a development that felt like the universe confirming that everything had worked out exactly as it was meant to. When she told Daniel and Kayla the news, both of their reactions were pure joy. A baby brother or sister. Kayla exclaimed, "Can we teach them about butterflies and fort building?" "We'll teach them everything," Daniel promised, his hand resting on Monica's still flat stomach where new life was beginning. That evening, as they sat on their back porch watching Kayla play in the yard, Monica marveled at the life they'd built together. The after-school program was expanding to 3 new locations. Daniel's consulting business was thriving with clients who valued his expertise and integrity. Dorothy had moved to Atlanta to be closer to her growing family. "So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself?" Monica asked Daniel, echoing a question that had become a running joke between them. "I'd stop running from it and start building a life worthy of that recognition," Daniel replied, pulling her closer on the porch swing they'd installed for quiet moments like this. "Would you run? Or would you build something that lasts?" "I'd build," Monica said without hesitation. "Every time. Because running never leads to anything good, but building with the right person. That's how you create a legacy." As the sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Monica placed Daniel's hand on her growing belly where their second child was developing. Created by choice, not desperation, in love rather than transaction. "This is what happens," she whispered, "when sacrifice becomes celebration." Their story had started with a necklace, a chance encounter, and a DNA test that changed 3 lives forever. But it had become something bigger, proof that love doesn't care about bank accounts or background checks, that families can be built in unconventional ways, and that sometimes the most unexpected connections create the strongest bonds. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. Tell me in the comments what aspect of Monica and Daniel's journey resonated most with you. And remember, the most powerful love doesn't rescue you from your life. It recognizes the strength that's been there all along. Because sometimes when you stop trying to fix what isn't broken and start celebrating what's already beautiful, you discover that the best love stories aren't about saving someone. They're about seeing them clearly enough to love them completely, just as they are.